The date is February 18, 1992. I'm Buford Johnson, and I've been asked to interview some of the pioneer workers in the Church of God down through the years. And I'm privileged today to have in the studio M.S. Curry, who for 39 years was under appointment of the General Overseer. In fact, he has worked under A.J. Tomlinson, M.A. Tomlinson, and now Billy Murray, 3 General Overseers. And he's been the pastor of A.J. Tomlinson, the pastor of M.A. Tomlinson, and while he was overseer of North Carolina, he had Billy Murray working under his direction as a pastor, I believe, of Bethany in that state. And now I'm going to turn to Brother Curry, and we're going to find out a little bit about this fellow. He's 85 years old next month, so he's been around here a while. Brother Curry, tell us about the front end of your ministry. When did you start? How old were you when you started preaching?
Well, I started I was converted June the 13th, 1925, at the Waimama camp meeting, Church
Florida.
of God camp meeting. And then we joined this church.
This is Florida, right?
Sir?
In Florida, right?
Yeah, in Florida, in Lakeland, Florida.
All right.
And then my father went to evangelizing, and they sent him to Sanford. And we put a tent up there and organized a church in Sanford, and it grew to 62 members.
Mm-hmm.
And so we went to the assembly in 1926, the church with Brother Tomlinson. And then we started working there, and then I was licensed in 27, I believe it was, as evangelist. And so I went on down the line, and they set me forth for a deacon in the local church, but you had to be 25 years old.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so by the time Brother Thompson said, you're only 23 years old, and said you'll have 2 years to wait. By that time, I was pastor in Old Coy, Florida, and the state overseer wrote Brother Thompson about me being set forth as a bishop.
Mm-hmm.
And I was the youngest bishop in the church for several years there.
Right.
They raised it to 30 now, I believe, 30 years.
Right. Concerning your pastoral work, I understood you pastored the Tabernacle Church in Cleveland, Tennessee.
Yeah, I pastored Old Coy 3.5 years. We started with 6 members and wound up with 86.
Mm-hmm.
And then come to Cordial to Shannon, Georgia, and pastored 1 year. Then I run a revival at the Tabernacle. See, the pastor resigned
Mm-hmm.
during the year
Right.
of 37, and Brother A.D. Evans taken over for 6 months, and he called me or wrote me and wanted me to come run a revival, and I brought up a string band. I called it string band from Georgia, 2 carloads.
All right.
And we had a revival. Me and my wife preached. The third night received the Holy Ghost in 10 days at the Tabernacle. Well, you know, at that time the Tabernacle was kindly, some people call it dried.
Yes.
And so I went back and got me two dancers, 2 shouters. I got
2 shouters.
I got Hazel Dyer.
Yes.
And I got
well
the
known.
Cora Williams,
Right.
and they shouted every aisle in that building.
Well, good.
When the music would be played, see the Georgia String Band.
While I'm thinking about it, don't want to escape this. I wanted to ask you about your father's nickname. They called him Battle Axe Bill. Tell us about that.
Well, he was asked for a permit to run the revival, him and W.B. Jessup at Mobile, Alabama. And he asked for a permit to preach on the streets. He liked to preach on the streets and in jails and
Right.
different places. And so they turned him down. Well, he went down the street and saw a fellow with a pet monkey. And so he was dancing and dancing to a record that was being played. And so my father said, well, if that can go on, I'm just going to preach anyway. So he got him a wagon, the big wagons they pull in with the horses down there.
Right.
Went back up on the main street and preached right on the main street. And so when he went back, W.B. Jessup hailed him as Battle Axe, said, that aren't my Battle Axe. And so he put the bill to it, Battle Axe Bill. That was way back down there.
Right. Now, when did you first start in the overseer work? You went to Florida first, but when was this?
Well, I was pastor of the Tabernacle in 38 here in Cleveland, and Brother Tomlinson sent me to Florida in 39, same like 39, and we had 17 churches. And so I always wanted to be overseer of a big state. And so I thought with my ability, the only way I'd ever get to be an overseer of a big state is to build one.
All right.
And so I began to organize myself. You have to organize yourself before you can organize other people.
That's right.
And so all of my songs and all of my preaching, I preach right direct on the church and conversion and salvation and
Right.
everything. Every time I'd visit the church, I'd preach on some department of the church. And so I kept it right before them there for all this time, you see. And so the first 10 years we didn't do too much, but after that we began to organize churches. When people moved into Florida from different sections of the United States.
Still doing it.
And so Brother Joe Cruz had a little money, and we borrowed $1,800 from him and bought 18 of these hospital tents, you know, like they use in the Army.
Right.
And everywhere we had a member, we'd send that tent.
I see.
And the secretaries would put it down, they'd seat it off, put lights in it, and then this member would start Sunday school. And so it was hard to get preachers in Florida.
Yeah.
And because in the summer you couldn't hardly live. The packing houses were closed and everything. And so Brother Wilson told me, said, the preachers you get out of Georgia and Tennessee and other places, said they come through and they're sometimes like a bunch of goats. He said they leave you.
Yeah.
Well, I decided, Brother Johnson, the best way to train preachers in the local state that live there. And so I decided if a member could take a tent and build it up to a Sunday school, get it ready for an organization, he was able to carry it on.
Good.
So I'd call him to preach. Now I said, I'm calling you to preach, and if God don't anoint you, you'll have to go back home.
Well, how many churches did you gain in the 20 years you were overseer?
72.
Net gain of 72 churches.
Yes, sir.
Great. What kind of membership, when the total of membership you have?
Well, we had, I believe it was 1900, and when I left the state, 1905, I believe it was, something like that when I left the state.
And where did you go from there as a state overseer?
Well, in 59, Brother Tomlinson changed me to Georgia. And there I found a bunch of zealous workers and great people in the state of Georgia. I followed a great overseer, Charlie Pennington.
Charlie Pennington.
And he was a great man, and everything was in order. And all I had to do was go to work, see.
You stayed there 5 years, did you?
5 years. We organized 27 churches in Georgia.
27. Then where did you go from there?
Well, in 64 then, he transferred me to North Carolina. And I followed G.A. Wilson. Of course, you know everything was in line under G.A. And so all I had to do was to go to work, building on the foundation that G.A. and these other overseers had built. And so we went to work then. We organized, I think, 28 churches in North Carolina. And but I kept this church and the doctrine right before the people constantly. And some people said you can't win people preaching doctrine. But I was first and second in soul saving. You take my record out of the minutes there. I was first and second in soul saving all the way through.
Beautiful.
And so a man that's not converted, he don't need to be a member of the church.
Right.
Preach him till he gets converted and then join him to the church.
I'll say, where did you go next? You go to South Carolina after that?
Yeah, and 68 then I was appointed to South Carolina, and I followed GA there. And of course everything was beautifully in order.
Right.
And beautiful parsonage and everything to live in, and so I just moved in and went to work there, and we organized 28 churches in South Carolina. But I found some zealous workers, some great workers in North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. Now in Florida, I built the railroad and run my train over it. But when I went to Georgia, I had to run my train over another man's railroad.
Another man's tracks, right?
I call it my trade, you see.
I think it's great that one man can lay a foundation and another man can come and build on it.
Yeah, yeah.
You went to Alabama. Was that your last state to be an overseer?
Yes, sir. I followed James Staggs, and he was another great one.
Right.
To me, he's tops in organizing churches, and so there was two that I dreaded. See, we set our goals for 10 to 15 churches a year.
Mhm.
And George Albert and James Staggs is two I dreaded.
Yeah, right.
And so,
I followed Brother Staggs.
yeah, oh, brother, they were preachers. See?
Right.
And so when I went to Alabama, I knew that nobody could preach like Staggs.
Right.
And so I had to kindly steer my business a little different from the preaching.
Mm-hmm.
And so they owed $50,000 on the youth camp.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the lawyer found a discrepancy in the deeds and wouldn't loan the money, and so 5 of the brethren borrowed the money.
Mm-hmm.
And I told them, I said, now the bank will sell the dishes off your table for this money.
Yeah.
And so I jumped in and we raised $50,000, paid the camp off.
Beautiful.
Then we jumped in and raised $32,000, paid the state tabernacle off.
Great.
And so I had a plan, $100 per family,
Mm-hmm.
and it went off so well, you see. And so
Right.
during that time, I lost my right eye.
Mm-hmm.
There come a hole in my right eye, and I lost my hearing. I never wore hearing aids till I was in Alabama. And so among all of the good things, I got some other things,
Yeah.
and I fell and on a bunch of keys there. As I come out of my office, it was nicely carpeted and onto a kind of a slick floor, and I fell and these keys ruptured the ligaments around my left hip bone. Woke up in the hospital for 10 days. See?
Wow. Yes.
But all of those things, I was glad to endure as long as I could bill for the church.
Right. Well, now, I want to ask you something about, you mentioned singing and music a while ago, and
Yes,
I
sir.
want to ask you something about this long string of Bible training camps, Bible training institutes where you taught music.
Yes, sir. Well, I was 22 years with the BTC
Mm-hmm.
and Bible training camp. I worked under some very, very great men. You know that, Brother Davidson and
Right.
Brother Pruitt, and so
Pete
here
Brooks.
come Brother Moxley, and but one of the great ones was J.B. Wright.
Right.
And so then the last one was Brother Coulter, I believe, that I worked under. And so when I was overseer of North Carolina, he told me, he said, your work is so great up there until I think that he just appointed another director of music for
Right.
BTI.
Mm-hmm.
And so I believe it was about several thousand there.
Right.
I
Yes,
forget
you-
just a number that we taught during the 22 years that I was there.
So you taught about everybody who came to BTC for, you had a
Yeah.
music class
Well,
each day, didn't you?
we had in the morning from 8:30 till 9. We had singing, teaching how to sing, you know.
Right.
And Brother Wright said there's 2 things I want you to learn them to do is when to stop and when to start. And I thought that was great of him, see.
Well,
and I said, why not put Stanley in teaching the rudiments of music, and I'll take the band in the evening. See,
Right.
up from 4 to 4:30. Well, I had a band. I had a high 60 in this band, all kind of
now,
music,
that's string music, right?
all kind of music,
Uh-huh.
horns and
Horns
everything.
and all.
Yeah, accordions and everything.
And you took people who didn't know the first thing about
First
music.
thing about it.
Beautiful.
I tell you a good one. Brother M.A. was watching me, Brother M.A. Tomlinson, and so a whole song we sang, Do Lord Remember Me.
Remember me.
And every time you say Do Lord, you change.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was going along with that finger there. That was G, and that was C,
Right.
and this was D. He said, how you keep them together? I said, watch my fingers.
So it worked. Well, now, speaking of music, I'm well acquainted with your children, and Barbara has sung many times in the assembly, a very trained voice, highly trained. Tell me a little bit about Barbara's singing.
Well, Barbara was educated in music in the Western Conservatory in Macon, Georgia.
All right.
And so she got her training there. Well, then Jill, my granddaughter, she started taking music at 4 years old. She can read music just like reading a newspaper. Barbara can too. See?
Right. Great.
And so then Steve then taken the trumpet.
And Steve is your grandson.
Yeah, he's
Barbara's child.
Yeah, he's pastoring Fayette, North Carolina.
At this time.
And I was down there, and he had 72 Sunday school rooms. And
Wow.
Brother Eldon Parker built that plant. It was a plant, and he had a full baseball diamond with a gym.
Wow.
And everything at that.
Right.
See, and they owned 5 beautiful houses all the way around there. And so Brother Parker had buses and all
Yes.
that to take care of the Sunday school. So he had a big Sunday school.
Right.
And so he was changed, and another man come in that couldn't operate this big business. Some people can operate bigger than others.
Right.
See? And so then the buses were sold, and when Steve was appointed there, I told him, I said, if you can build it without buses, you'll be in good shape because it costs so much money for buses.
Right.
Well, they got a daycare, about 300 there, see. And so they got buses and vans for that. But I said, if you can operate your Sunday school, and I noticed the other day Billy Seiler has a larger Sunday school in the state, and Steve has second.
Great.
And so then I've got a grandson that's pastoring Piedmont, South Carolina. That's Betty's, the oldest girl's
All right.
boy.
That's Hubert Vickers.
Yeah,
Betty.
and so
All right.
Hubert, his father, is pastoring Greensboro, North Carolina.
Now, Hubert, how many years, do you know how many years Hubert was overseer of different states? That's
Well,
your son-in-law.
I believe it was probably, must have been about 20 years.
So, but he worked in Alabama, East Texas.
Yes, sir.
Was it South Carolina he
Yes,
was there?
sir.
But now tell us that you have another son-in-law that's well known throughout church circles.
Well,
Leonard Kendrick.
Kendrick was the general treasurer for about 18, 20 years.
Right.
See? And he was a musician too. All of them musicians.
Right. You couldn't get in your family unless you could play music.
Well, a man used to pass by my father's house, and he said the old Battle Axe Bill had the biggest bunch of young'uns and the ugliest crowd he ever saw, and every one of them cried by note.
Cried by note. Let me ask you about some early days. You mentioned your father again.
Yes, sir.
You were acquainted with J.A. Wilkerson,
Yes, sir.
the grandfather of Dave Wilkerson,
Yes.
who wrote Cross the Switchblade.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about Brother Wilkerson's overseer work and pastoral work.
He was our state overseer when we joined the church. And my father was pastoring a Church of God there, and he built a 50 by 70 tabernacle and a 5-room bed parsonage, and all on the hill, and had 80-something members. Well, that year he went to the seminary and got acquainted with Brother Tomlinson, and so he sent Brother Wilkerson down. And so when he did, well, Brother Wilkerson organized a church with 62 members. They called 62 members come off the hill.
Is that? And so J. Wilkerson, I've seen his name in the minutes, the old minutes,
yes.
and he was a great man.
Well, he pastored the tabernacle, and he's overseer of Ohio and 23, and he's overseer of Florida, and he was a great man.
And so your 3 daughters married 3 preachers.
3 preachers.
And so you had to be a preacher to get in your family. Well, that's great. There's something that I told over at our prayer meeting just a few minutes ago that told a story about you. And you told me one time about buying some throw rugs and down at Dalton or someplace around here, Dalton, Georgia.
Buying which?
Some throw rugs. You bought some throw rugs to sell.
Throw
Tell us about that. I got a kick out of that.
me and Joe Kelly was traveling with me. And I do a lot of sleeping when I drive, and so I hired Joe. I said, Joe, I'll give you $50 a month and take care of you and all your expenses and everything to drive for me. He said, you got your driver. And so he'd take the state truck and buy these rugs. And so then we'd sell rugs to get our money back out of it, and then he'd supply them to the church where they could make money out of them too, see. And so there's a lot of things that we would do to help the church to raise money for the different departments of the church.
Right.
And so this was a pretty good plan, see.
So you were buying them wholesale and selling them retail eventually down the line after you passed through.
Oh, yeah. We'd buy
and the
them
church has
wholesale.
benefited.
Well, we'd buy a truckload at a time, see.
Yes.
And you take, you have to buy in volumes to get a bargain, see.
Right.
Now, like here, the old Bethel Book Club, you remember that?
Right.
Well, it had I guess it was stacked 10-foot square. So I come down, during BTI and was teaching there, and I went into the publishing house, and there's over half a truckload of them books.
Great.
And so I said, John, sell them out to get as much money as you can for what we paid, then give them the rest of them, and they can sell them what they want to sell them for. See.
Well, you've been accused over these years of knowing how to make money, and you didn't make it just for the church. You just put it right back in and make it for yourself. However, the Lord blessed you as well as blessed them. In your work as overseer, some 39 years, I have some statistics that tell me that you took in probably 5,000 members in the church, and these. 158 churches organized during that, 168 churches during that time, and fleet. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, Brother Kent, started this in the early 50s, I believe, and so then all the planes that different ones would buy, well, they'd paint them the same color with the same scripture, and so he could motivate us to the extent we'd spend every dime we had to get an airplane. So I bought two. I had a Ronica Champ and then I had a Luscombe. A Ronica Champ is one that gets off the ground quick,
right,
and a Luscombe is a ground lover. And so we was flying off of a runway, a distance trip, 1,800 feet long with a high wall on each end.
Wow.
Well, the state bought then a four-place Stinson, which was a lovely plane.
Right.
And so Brother Queener'd come down and fly those planes, and Brother Nelson Johnson, and they learned me to fly the Stinson with a high pattern. Well, you'd come in over the wire.
Yes.
And then you stall it out.
Drop it in.
And just before you get to the ground, give it the power, and it level out, see. But I asked Brother Johnson, I said, suppose the motor went dead. Well, he said, that's your hard luck.
Did you ever have any hard landings?
Well, quite a few. I had some good bumps.
Good bumps.
Yes, coming over that high wire, say, and coming in there. And then I was trained off of the Pulaski Airport. We'd fly. Me and Vickers would fly from Ocoee over there, and they'd give us training. See, they was long runway. And so then a Popco was just about 8 miles over there, and it had a long runway. But I was trained here in Cleveland. Leroy Field soloed me here in Cleveland.
He soloed me.
Well, I had to go so high and spin the plane, and I never could spin the plane.
Right.
And so when I went so many 100 feet up there, and he told me, he said, spin it. Well, when I spin it, I lost conscience of myself. And directly, Steve sat behind me. He hit me in the back of the head with his hand, just slapped me fired at me. And so when he did, I turned the sticks loose.
Yeah.
So I froze to the stick.
Right.
And so he said, Brother Kerr, I hate to hit you, but that's the only way to save our lives.
Speaking of Leroy Field, he taught me how to fly.
Yeah, he was a great one.
And I was a member of that White Angel fleet. Do you remember how many planes they had in it? What was the latest number of planes?
Well, I think they had about 70-something, 80 when they...
and these planes were mostly for public relation work and dropping tracks and various things like that.
Whatever that can't, CPMA desired us to do. Then we'd have these airport services.
Yes, sir.
And he'd call us in, like, if I couldn't go, I'd always send a Cadillac and 2 planes to be in his parade.
Right. I have been in some of those airport programs they used to call.
Oh, they were great.
Right. I want to talk about your music a little bit. Now, you're holding an album there in front of you. You're kind of tilted where it won't glare on the camera there. This is an entire album produced with your records and your singing and your music. And,
yes, sir.
And that's a tenor banjo?
Tenor banjo.
Is that your main instrument? Has been over the years?
Yes, sir.
Now you play a lot of instruments though, don't you? Different kinds.
I could play 12 at the time I retired.
12 instruments. And
yes, sir.
How many albums have you made over a period of time?
Well, I've only made this one. It's
all right.
He wanted me to make some more, but it seemed like I didn't have time for it. And so these albums, you have quite a time getting rid of them when you have 100 made. See.
Now, let me ask you about the boss in your family. I understand you've been married 62 years now.
Yes, sir.
To Sister Curry.
Yes, sir.
She's not in real good health now, is she?
No, she's not in good health.
And you've had some bad rounds with your heart.
Yeah, I have my heart, water overflows my lungs and heart, and I have to take heavy medication to keep it off of my heart. Dr. Love is my heart doctor, and so...
That's a good name for a doctor.
Yeah, when he finds water there, he calls me in and blows it off.
But you look like you're making pretty well. You're driving your own car where you want to go.
Yeah, I'm doing pretty fair, but my eyesight is real bad.
Yes, well, now, your most recent job, you just retired after, what, 7 years as president of the Upper Room Group?
Yeah.
Is it 7?
Upper Room. We had quite a nice group.
Right.
And so the church then decided that they would get a brother by the name of Buford Johnson.
Yeah, they caught me gone and put me in. That's what they did.
And well, so he's doing well with it.
Thank you, Brother Curry. It's been a pleasure to talk with you in this Upper Room Group. I hope to have several of them on camera and to talk with them about the work they've been doing and such as that. And it's been a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
You're number 5 on my list so far. For those who would go back this far in their association, I've interviewed J.R. Kinzer, was our general treasurer for many years, and D.H. Queener, who was general foreign mission secretary for many years.
Oh, yeah, I knew.
And then there was F.F. Johnson, who was also foreign mission secretary.
Years.
And then your good buddy E.H. Griffith.
Oh, he's never good.
He's about your age, and he's still going strong.
Wonderful.
And these 4 are already on tape, and the Lord willing, we'll be reaching out into some of these other fellows and ladies and talk to them. And I'm sure the people will be watching this tape and listening to the different things you covered. And I imagine some of them probably would say, well, I wish he'd ask him this or that or the other things I can't even remember to ask you about. But, Brother Curry, you have a slogan I like. You said you're always ready to preach or sing or whatever. Just plug in. You're ready to go.
Amen.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you coming in today.
Thank you.
Lord bless you.